and ostrich and cows. Eventually onto the Ashenden Road, and you can go up towards Ashenden, turn left or up a Polycotton home. That's in response to your note, Fernando. I mean, in generic terms, Anthony and the team in front of you are working very hard to improve the whole of the footpath systems throughout Chearsley and the neighbouring villages, as be evidenced, if you like, by the new steps across towards the railway line. Yvonne Edmonds very kindly giving us permission now to improve the gates on the pathway behind their property. And we're talking to James Gibson, who's been very helpful on a number of projects on his land. Slightly less of an advance with John Lloyd, but I am still working on that particular area. Suffice to say, with the support of Bucks County Council, we're doing pretty well, and I'm happy to keep you up to date as time passes. Thank you. Any other questions that need to be raised?
I don't have any.
Okay. Do we want to take that one quickly? If Darren, I did say to get onto YouTube. Do you want to take the one, John, around the Soul Spark interactive prayer stations around the village? John Lewis? Have you got the email in front of you?
I have, yes. Is that why you're asking me?
Yeah, I just wondered if you wanted to leave that one. Otherwise, it becomes a bit sort of boring with me talking all the time.
Okay, yes, I can do that. This is an email we had from Darren and Sharon, and it relates to a Soul Spark initiative that they're taking. This, excuse me, not looking at the screen here, I'm reading from my PC screen. This relates to something that the church had planned to do. It's a series of interactive prayer sessions that they were going to organise inside the church. But obviously that's been rather scuppered now by the current separation requirements. So they're proposing instead to take it outdoors, and they have identified 10 locations or stations around the village, each of which is there for a specific purpose. So I'll just mention a couple: War Memorial for prayer related to bereavement, the bus stop related to helping others, and there's 10 of those altogether. And they are just asking, or the plan would be to leave each station up for a week to give people a chance to visit them. And they were just asking for our feedback as to whether we would be content for this to happen.
Okay, thanks, John. And I think the general opinion of the Parish Council that whilst this is not wholly a parish matter, if not conclusively, it's important that we do have the links with the church, as we do with other organisations in the village, for giving our feedback. And thanks to Darren and Sharon for asking us for that. I think the general opinion from our point of view is that we would be very supportive of this. We'd be more than happy, I think, through the good offices of Keith Turnbull, head of IT, to make sure that this will appear through the Chearsley blog. I'm not so sure about the relationship with the MailChimp, John, because there's some GDPR issues possibly with that, is there?
Potentially. I think it's more an issue of that really is for PC business, and I mean, we could accept this as PC business, but it's a view. I'm not really sure. It's not for us to rule on, decide on, or anything. So I don't know what everybody feels, but my suggestion would be probably that's not the right medium to use. But certainly the blog would be perfect.
Just the blog, I would have thought. Blog would be fine.
Any other thoughts, Martin?
I think it's good. The fact that the church has been locked, I think that has been something that's been missing from our community through the whole of this lockdown process. Those people that might have been able to take some sanctuary there and have a few minutes to themselves haven't been able to use that as a facility, which is a shame. Although I know there have been there have been services going online, and there has been outreach within the villages. So I think as long as there's the hygiene element with any interactive items is maintained, I think that's a really, really positive thing to do.
Okay, Martin, any views? Keith?
I think putting it out on the blog will give pretty wide coverage. So
Okay.
I think
Martin,
that's the best way
anything
of
to
doing
add?
it. No, just I'd agree that's the
Okay.
best way of doing it.
Well, I think it's important that we do our bit to support the church as we do normally, and other organisations, the cricket club, the shop, the pub, and everything else. So hopefully that brings us together closer as well. So, okay, so hopefully Darren and Sharon, that helps, and we've managed to fit it in at very short notice, but pleased we've been able to address it. So thank you very much for that email. Any others around at the moment? Helen, or are we finished?
No, I haven't got any other questions that have come in. That's it.
Okay, in that case, I would suggest that we move on, because that's just over the 10 minutes we normally allocate. Although I think in these times, it's probably wise to give as much time within reason to people's questions. And I know there are other people that will be sending in questions after a few calls in the last 24 hours for the next meeting. Okay, apologies for absence. I think we're all together, so no apologies. Any declarations of interest in accordance with section 30(3) and 235(2) of the Localism Act 2011, councillors to declare any personal, prejudicial or pecuniary interest pertaining to the agenda?
no,
No.
No.
The only one I think I flagged up, Helen, in a note that I sent out was the conversation I'd had with Simon Vickers, as
Yeah.
part of the conversation I had with him about some other things, and I've registered that with Helen, so that's it's been logged.
Okay.
So if you can make sure that's ratified in the minutes, that'd be brilliant. Thanks, Helen.
Okay.
Approval of the minutes, Monday the 20th of April. Do I have a proposer?
I'm happy to propose.
Thanks, Jules. And a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Martin. And Helen, could you just remind us of what matters arising from the previous minutes there may be?
So the first action was John Howard to write to Bucks Recycling about the number of their lorries coming through the village. And I think, did we decide that that should perhaps be postponed?
Yes, I gave it some thought, and I felt it was absolutely the wrong time, because we're in a sort of rather unreal situation, probably as regards numbers, but also I think my experience with complaining about HGVs, and we've had to do it on a number of occasions, if you haven't got any rock solid evidence, it's almost not worth expending the energy. I mean, you might feel better if you do, but you don't actually achieve any results. So I think my thoughts are that as soon as circumstances permit, we should update our, we did 3 studies in 2016, which I think provided us with some very good, hard, robust, documented information. Let's do another survey, or maybe a couple of surveys, but I think we briefly discussed at the last meeting, it wouldn't be, it certainly wasn't the right time then, but it could be that we're moving into, you know, as things are easing up a bit, where I think it would be quite easy to observe social distancing. I think we just felt it was the wrong thing. It wasn't an essential thing that needed doing absolutely right here, right now at the last meeting. So I think let's keep that one open. If I can leave it with me, I'll perhaps have a little bit of a nosy around the latest guidelines, and if I feel that circumstances have moved on sufficiently, then, you know, let's look at doing something the next month. But we probably ought to do 2 surveys, and that will then give us some ammunition, I hope, to work with. I mean, the only issue is, of course, how representative of the current situation are we in at the minute? I mean, we may find there are, I mean, the lorries are still a damn nuisance, but there ain't so many of them at the minute. But I guess that'll be changing as every week goes by.
Okay.
So should so we take that point forward then, so we don't lose the momentum on that, John, to make sure that when the moment is right, we can then start to action some.
Well, I'll get a proposal together. I'll have a look at the way we did it last time. I might have a chat with one or two people who did it with me last time, and there are probably some improvements that we can introduce to make it a bit more comprehensive. So I'll get that going in the next few weeks, and then, assuming we're all happy, we'll sit on our chairs and count the lorries.
Okay.
Okay. So the next sorry, carry on, Nick.
Any other thoughts around that? It's quite a key issue in the village, but are you happy with that? Or any more points that you want to add for now?
No, I just agree with John. It's both writing to Bucks Recycling and getting further action is important, but it's not for right now.
Okay. All right, Helen.
I'm sure I can count on all my colleagues in the parish council to volunteer to join the survey for the day as well.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there.
Right. So the next action was for John and Keith to rationalise the various distribution lists for village communications. I don't know whether that's been done or not.
So we have spoken on that. We have compared lists, and I think our view is that the two lists sit quite comfortably next to each other. So there's no need to rationalise as such. We will just continue with both lists.
So that one's all done then?
I would say so.
Yeah, there's I think the numbers are, I think there's 184 on your list, the MailChimp list, John, 117 on the blog list. There was only an overlap of 65. So the combined coverage was 285 unique addresses. I've also dumped out Facebook, which is up to the Facebook Chearsley Village Group, which is up to 101 now. So I'm going to add that in as well, just to see what the overlap there is. But overall, I think we're getting between those three now. I think we're getting very good coverage across the village.
Okay, so basically the lists have been rationalised, and you're happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well done, John. Thank you. Helen?
Right. So the next point was just on making sure that we invited the AVDC and BCC councillors to the next meeting, which obviously we have, but it doesn't appear that that they've obviously managed to join us this evening.
Well, if they are online and they're watching on YouTube, I mean, Clive or Mike, you can email me directly. I've just received a couple more emails just to say you're online. But apart from that, yeah, there's not much else we can do.
And then the next action was regarding the bank account. So Robert to give instructions on how to access the bank account to Nick in a sealed envelope for Nick to hold in the event that Robert is unavailable.
That's all been done.
Okay, lovely. And
There we are, Robert.
And the next one is Keith to draft a risk register.
Yeah, that's still work in progress.
Take that forward.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think, is that it? That's it. That was all the
Just a
action.
small part on the action under item 8. There was a second half to that on me to add the councillors to the email distribution list, just to register the fact that that's been done now, so they will get all our circulations.
Okay, cool. So I will virtually sign these now then, Helen,
Okay.
as being accurate and agreed. And then I'll keep these, I'll keep the originals as time goes on. I can always hand them to you, post them at the most appropriate moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for a quick footnote on the Soul Spark interactive prayer stations around the village, could you, when you get a chance, Helen, could you just note that Darren just sent me a note saying a slight change. Tara and that'd be Tara and Richards, won't it? Can't host one because I think it might upset the dogs. So they're going to move to their house. So point 4 on their list, we'll now move to Darren Sampson's property.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. Mr. Bound, planning.
Yeah. Okay. I've decided over the last 12 weeks that everybody that's been in lockdown has decided they need a bit more space around the house. So everybody seems to be putting in planning application for extensions. It seems to be an unusually busy period of time. For the sake of keeping it short at this meeting, if anybody that's logging into this is interested, our full responses can be seen on the ABDC planning website. So this is really just a very quick run through of what we've looked at and the decisions we've come to. First application was for garage conversion and first floor extension above existing garage at Tidefield in Dark Lane. On this one, we've registered no objections, but we've reverted to the ABDC Highways department regarding provision of parking space requirements, because the removal of the garage and increasing the property to 4-bedroom property does potentially increase the requirement to 3 spaces. The Highways department do have a way of measuring space requirements, and which we're not privy to. I expect we could if we wanted to, but we've passed that on to, or that matter is with them to look at. From our point of view as a parish council, we will do anything we can to prevent any parking on the sunken lanes. That's really not what we want to see. So that one's over to the Highways, but we've registered no objections to that application. Second one is the demolition of Chearsley Hill Barn and the Longhouse, including all ancillary buildings. So that's all the old farm buildings there. This is actually a revised application. We previously objected to or opposed the first application, and the revised application, as far as the parish council is concerned, have failed to address most of the issues and concerns which we'd raised. There's a very detailed report on the website from Hannah McGrory, who's in the Directorate for Planning and Growth Sustainability Department, and she, in better language than ourselves, has clearly outlined all the issues which we had concerns with. Overall urbanisation of the site, which is very unwelcome, very sensitive site on the outside of the village, concern over ridge lines, and overall there's a fairly detailed report which I would ask anyone to take a look at. So our end result is to oppose this revised application as well.
Are you aware? Sorry, Paul. I was at that meeting. Yeah. You're aware of the comment I made about the conversation I had with Simon Vickers and the revised work they're doing?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's important to point out that, and so it's all above board and people know what's going on. During a conversation I had with Simon about something totally different, the subject was raised by him, and I assured him that whilst I would always be interested, the right route would be via the parish council. And they've had some considerable discussions, I think, since this previous application with the lady I think you mentioned, and come back with a number of alterations, changes, improvements. And I've suggested that he put that forward to the parish council as a formal document through ABDC, I guess, planning.
Yep.
But in the meantime, he offered, if the parish council wanted it, to meet up with them formally in a location locally and talk through what they were trying to do. So that choice is entirely down to the parish council.
I think personally, I'm quite happy to wait until it comes through the official sources, because I think I saw some provisional drawings, and probably unless others require it, I don't need any interpretation of those drawings. I think they're pretty well straightforward. I would like to see a full application accompanied by the revised comments from the ladies had the discussion with, which I think will then give us a lot more background to how she is looking at it, as well as the way in which we're looking at it. I think from the parish council's point of view, we think it'd be a very, very sad loss of the barns at the top end of the village. You know, once gone, never retrieved. It does, the application as it stood was urbanised the site, which wasn't you know, to what was required. So as far as I'm concerned, personally, I'm very happy to wait until the revised application comes through. If any parish councillors feel they need interpretation of it, then by all means, if they wish to have a meeting, do so.
Councillors?
Well, if I can give you a view, I would say obviously always happy to get information on any proposals that are coming up, and I would be content to look at anything Simon wants to send us, or if he feels explaining something to us would help, then I wouldn't mind listening, but it would be on the basis that I personally would be offering absolutely no comment or response whatsoever until the full application came through.
I think that's absolutely right, John. Other councillors' thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with John on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
Martin? Keith?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
John?
On the next one, Nick, if I could pass that over to John, who's done a superb document on that. Perhaps explain where we are with the barn off Winchnet Road.
Yes, this I wrote to all of you, and I mentioned a couple of times that this was a rather technical document. I'm sure you understood what I mean by that. Essentially, it's based on a proposal to turn farm premises into residential premises on the basis of what's it called? Planned development. Approved. What's the term?
Permitted development.
Permitted development.
Thank you, Julia. Permitted development. And there are a number of conditions under these circumstances that you have to go through in order to enable it to be done under those particular regulations. And this submission was essentially, it's required by the regulations, and it was about demonstrating that it met all the requirements for permitted development. That's essentially what it was about. And should it go through and be successful, then the development could just go ahead. We wouldn't see any planning application. That would be it. In reading through it, the view that I came to, and I think when I wrote it up, others agreed, was that there were a number of areas in which this didn't meet the requirements of the regulations, and as such it shouldn't be allowed to go through under the particular regulations in question. It should come back as a full planning application, and that was the essence of our response.
Yeah. Excellent.
Good. Next one is 3 Elmbrook Close, and this was a demolition of garage and construction of single-storey stroke and side and rear extension. Sorry, lost my light here. Basically, we're in the same issue here on the highways with the first application, where we need clarification on the to make sure the parking standards be met. And in fact, I've just noticed this evening that the Highways Department have, in fact, asked for further information to determine whether or not the internal accommodation and now the parking standards are met by the application. So that one is with them. We have also just indicated that we assume that the right of light provisions are being met. There's a drawing on there's a line on the diagram which shows where the right of light is, and assume the planning department pick that up because it's not something we need to be concerned with. It's a technical issue. So subject to that, sorry, going back on the parking, the highways department did say this is a narrow road, and as a result, they're very keen to make sure that parking standards are met, so to prevent off-street parking, off-road parking rather. So on that, we've issued no objections, subject to highways comments. Final one is Merrifield, and this was a revised application. And this is quite a difficult one for us to look at, because basically there was a small house on the site, quite a large site, and as the property stood, with the passage of time, the internal layout was really unworkable as a family house. And because of its positioning on the site, it was impractical to try and extend too much to the rear, which meant that it had to come out to the front, which compromised the host dwelling. We believe that the revised application, which has been put together after considerable discussion, we understand, with the planning authorities, presents a much more balanced and well-proportioned building, and have as a result issued no objections to the new application. I think that I should have asked on each one of these if everyone was happy with that. Was the shortened version of our response, but as I say, the detailed documents are available on the ABDC website anyway. That concludes planning matters, unless there's any queries.
That's great, Paul. That's great. Thank you very much. Some really great work in there. Thank you. Correspondence?
I haven't had anything come in.
Anybody? No. Contributions from ABDC. I've not had any. Well, no. I've had conversations with Clive Harris a few times. I've not spoken to Mike Hawkett for some time, but as far as I know, no, I don't think there is. I mean, I don't know whether this is an appropriate time just to say about this sort of forum I've joined. I think that's probably any other business later, so we'll leave that for now. Finance.
Can I just, sorry, could I just say, perhaps minute, it would be nice to have contributions from our local councillor, albeit whether it's in the Zoom meeting or future meetings, because I think we do run a lot of meetings without the feedback, which I think would be very useful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just a very minor point, I guess it's only just occurred to me, but AVDC and BCC don't really exist anymore, do they? There's just a single Bucks council, so we ought to amend
I think the people do, though. They still have the role for the parish councils, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, valid point. Yeah.
So what does they want to say? Contributions from BC councillors, Buckinghamshire Council?
Yeah.
I think that would be the formal heading, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Robert, good evening.
Hi. Let me deal with the finance report first. There were, Helen, two actions from the last meeting. One was to make sure that someone else in the parish council had access to the account. The second one was to provide read-only access to another third party. As far as I'm concerned, that's been done. But John, I haven't heard whether you've actually received it yet. Have Lloyds reacted?
I've heard nothing from them, no.
They've acknowledged the application, the request, but as yet nothing's happened on that. So
yeah, okay. I expect it's the usual. Everything's slow through lack of staff at the moment.
Well,
yeah.
Anyway, it's also been done. That's the important thing.
Okay.
The only other point that I wanted to mention this evening is that, as I mentioned in the second finance report that I issued this week, We've now had the internal audit come back on the annual report and the AGAR, and the internal auditor suggested that we remove some of the items from the list of fixed assets, the principal one of those being the money we spent with BWB. And given the correspondence and the conversations over the last week or so, maybe that's not a bad idea. As such, it's an asset that we can't resell, we can't do anything with. So I find it very difficult actually to object to the comments that were made. So I've restated the fixed assets and reissued the annual accounts. And as long as the council is comfortable with that, then Nick, I will get them to you tomorrow morning for you to sign, and then please on to Helen, and then they can go in for external audit.
Okay. Okay, thanks. That's good, Robert. Yep.
And that's all I've got to say.
No, brilliant, brilliant. No, well done, Robert. Again, I mean, I think the internal auditors, well, we've been using in Brill, and I think getting that sort of clean sheet with some recommendations is testament to the work that Robert has been doing for us. So thanks, Robert. That's great.
Perhaps, Nick, do we actually need just to put on record that we've agreed that change that Robert has requested there?
Oh yeah, I'm assuming that that's minuted. And,
Yeah,
and
the council needs actually formally to accept the account.
is everyone okay with that and understand what's happening there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, indeed.
That's adopted. Okay. I'm not. What? Sorry. Okay. I'm not so sure. Reports from councillors attending meetings and outside organisations. Be very careful. Social distancing. Anybody? No. Okay. Subcommittee decisions for ratification. John, I think John Lewis.
Well, last time round we did the trust under this heading, but we've got a separate agenda item for it this time.
Ah, yeah, we have. Okay. Any others? Any others that you know of, Helen?
No, I'm not aware of anything. This has been the planning, but we've been through that already.
Okay. Anything on officers' reports? I see. I've really brought you up to speed with footpaths, which are percolating away very nicely, and Fenella, who has had trouble logging in, she's probably logged in by now, is asking me online, can I tell her what the decision is about style at Chearsley Firs? I'll have to wait until the end, Fenella, but to save you getting too excited with anticipation, it might be better to try and look at the recording at the end of this on YouTube, because you'll get the full version.
No, Nick, I need to interrupt.
Yep.
There was a technical issue, my fault. The pre-planned link didn't work, so I had to recreate a new link to get the streaming working. So unfortunately, your full explanation at the beginning wasn't recorded, so my apologies.
Okay. I think for the purpose of brevity and expediency, what I will do is drop Fenella a written note of what I confirmed to everyone earlier. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah, my apologies.
No, that's okay, Keith. Listen, man, you've been doing a brilliant job. So we're in the early stages here. But Fenella, for you, no decisions as such, but some very good detail about what we're trying to do, which hopefully will answer your questions. And I'm sure in the spirit of knowing how wonderfully involved you are, you will come back to me. Thank you. Any others, officers' reports?
I'd say a few words about the pheromone traps, just to give you
Yes,
an update. They were put in the trees on the 25th of April, 2 of them, with help from Jay Gibson. I think I emailed you about that. We'll replace the existing lures on Saturday the 6th of June, and then again in July, and that should take us to the end of the season. We seem to have captured substantial numbers. And for a bit of private interest, I'm going to monitor the numbers over the season and perhaps do it next year as well, just to see, you know, my own personal interest, to see what happens to the little so-and-sos. And I did drop you, the council, a note on the walnut tree at the top of Shops Lane.
Ian, I think that's brilliant news, and well done you and Jay for climbing up the tree to put the traps in. What it says to me immediately is this is probably a bigger problem in terms of the numbers than we probably originally thought. And if that is the case, I think your findings will be crucial in sharing with all those people in the village who have them on their own private land. And it might well encourage people then to take some actions themselves if they want to see the horse chestnut tree protected and flourish over the coming years. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, well, I had thought I would do another survey. I've spotted another couple of horse chestnut trees in and around the village. So I'm going to repeat it about the same time at the end of the season, as it were, sort of middle of September. And we can publicise the details of that again and remind people. The blog article, I've had no responses to that whatever, so people are either not bothered or are doing something without any help from me.
I know Tim Morby has put a couple of ordered and put up a couple of traps in his chestnut trees, Ian. So, but happy to boost another, you know, put another plug on the blog. I think we should push this.
Yeah. It's a shame, really, because it's one of those issues that's so vitally important, but it's a bit like, you know, companies with health and safety officers are always tearing their hair out because no one ever listens to them. But then something goes pear-shaped and everyone wants to know about it. So anything we can do, I think, Ian, to promote the importance of this, to keep the village looking beautiful is really important.
Will do.
Thanks, Ian. Well done, sir. Update on Oxford-Cambridge Expressway.
I guess that's me, and nothing to update. Haven't heard from our good friends at the No Expressway group for a few weeks now, and they very much have their fingers on the pulse of this. And so we await further developments, but obviously in the current situation, it's very much on the back burner. Just to remind you that there was a review promised. That was the latest news that we had, and we've heard nothing further. And I'm really waiting for, as I say, for our friends at the No Expressway group, who are very much in touch with this issue, to keep us, or not just ourselves, but a lot of the local PCs in the area up to speed, and, you know, if we need to do anything from our part.
Great. Thanks, John. Thank you very much. So much is on hold at the moment, isn't it? So much uncertainty, but I'm sure things will get better. I'm sure they will. John Lewis, Village Trusser.
John, item 13 first.
The financial position of the village hall. Well, I thought it was so sound under the auspices of Keith Turnbull as the treasurer. Keith.
Just a quick update from the worrying position that I reported last time. I'm pleased to report that having reapplied for the government grant via BCC, also with your support, Nick, and via you, Clive Harris's councillor's support, also with several villagers who pointed me in the direction of some specific updates on what they thought the position was, which I'd already come across. Anyway, long story short, you know, the reapplication of the grant succeeded, so the village hall got granted £10,000. So this really puts us in a solid position for the rest of the year, despite, you know, losing you know, approximately £1,000 in bookings per month. So really good result. And as I said, I was really impressed by the number of villagers who spoke to me and tried to help and did help, pointing to reference material, etc. So so good news overall.
Good.
Well done. Well done. Good stuff, Keith. That's a real boost for Village Hall. John.
Mr. Chairman, can I just, on the subject of grants, the cricket club have applied for an ECB, I forget the technical name now. They recently applied for a grant, so we just await the outcome. But we're in a very similar situation to the Village Hall in that the you know, all the usual income sources have pretty much dried up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, John. So Village Trust, John.
Okay, Village Trust. So we've made some good progress since we discussed it at the last meeting, I'm pleased to say. ChearsleyPC has spoken to all of the prospective trustees, and they are all agreeable to doing the job. So that is Martin, ChearsleyPC himself, Martin Johnson, Rachel Sampson, Margaret Morby, Sharon Woodford, and myself, the 5 trustees. All have seen the trust deed and are content with it. And at the moment, it's in the process of doing the rounds for their signatures. So I've signed it. I guess ChearsleyPC has signed it by now, and it may well be that he's got it to at least one or more of the others. So within the next day or two, we will have an active village trust once more.
Well done.
Brilliant.
What I would like to do, Nick, given that we're going to be dependent on you signing a letter off to the bank, I would like to put on record a proposition that you can use as the basis for that signature, which will say that because it's not a parish council initiative, this, but the bank want the parish council to be happy with what's going on in order for them to release the funds to us that they hold. So I propose a motion which says that the parish council is satisfied that Chearsley Village Trust should be reactivated based on the new trust deed dated the 18th of May 2020 and in the care of the 5 trustees named in that document. I think if everybody's happy to put that on record, put it in the minutes, I've sent Helen a copy of those words.
Agreed from me.
Everything you need, Nick.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Everyone?
Yep.
Yeah.
All behind it. Unanimous support, John.
Excellent. And you might be interested to know that the deed also now says that the first meeting will be held by the 31st of July. And we put that date in because ChearsleyPC and I are confident that we can get a first meeting up and running somewhat before then. It'll have to be Zoom, of course, but the trustee does allow for meeting in that way. So that's perfectly in order.
Just out of interest, John, I mean, it's tremendous news that we've at long last, after a lot of hard work by a lot of people digging and pushing and shoving, to get this up in the village is a great thing. And we need to think, I think, John H., about how we might publicise this as well, in line with the Village Trust, to let people really know what's been achieved. And maybe the trust needs to then think about the wording in terms of how they approach the trust, should they want to, you know, show some interest in trying to get something from it, I guess. But I don't think we should just let it go as we did before, or as it was before. It became almost a secret society, I felt. And I don't know what your views are, John. You're a trustee. But I do think we should get some sort of transparency available. And,
Yes.
and my second question was, are the meetings closed, or can people attend and listen?
The trust deed is silent on that subject, so that's probably something that the trustees will need to take a view on. The trust deed itself, I'm just checking to see whether I put it up. Yeah, so the trust deed itself is on the website. It's one of the documents I put up for this evening's meeting. So that's there for anybody to have a look at. And importantly, it states the objectives of the trust. It gives an indication of what it's for, i.e. who it will give funds to, circumstances under which it will give those funds, and other things that it will or won't do. So it's fairly comprehensive, and I think it's important that everybody in the village is aware of all of that. So that's completely transparent. In terms of attendance at the meeting, then, as I say, I think we need to talk about that. But what I would expect us to do is to, at our first meeting, talk through all of this stuff and make a decision at that meeting. Obviously, it will be what the others think as well, but I will be surprised if they don't agree that we actually have a fairly wide publicity exercise as to the existence of the trust, and perhaps put its objectives out in slightly simpler, plain language than exists in the trust deed.
Okay, I'll leave that with you then, John, and you'll update us at some point.
Yeah.
John,
Thank
can I just ask, what's the financial position of the trust?
At
It
the
seems
moment,
unclear.
it's the at the moment it's got £1. So we're starting with £1, which is all you need to kick off a trust deed. We won't be able to support too many good causes with that level of funding, but I think is it about £1,200, Nick? Do you remember the sum that's in the account?
I've read that, £1,200.
Yeah, there should be about that. Yeah, there should be about that amount in the account.
Yes. So I think that money, once we get this letter from Nick and Alan Whiffin, is the other signatory to this letter, we will be able to get our hands on that money, which is the substantial money. I think there's probably some money hovering around someplace from a village fete a couple of years ago that was destined for the trust.
Should be anything between 1,000 and 1,500 quid, I think.
Okay, so we could be looking at £2,500 to £3,000 initially, and then of course whatever else comes our way.
Absolutely, John. Good. Any other thoughts or questions on that? No?
I just had a quick question. How often will you be meeting?
Again, TBD. I would have thought it's going to be driven by demand.
Yeah, and it's purely for my curiosity. I just didn't know if you had anything planned.
Yes. I mean, it's not. I would be surprised if we decide to meet monthly. I would be equally surprised in the other direction if we only meet once a year. So it's somewhere
in
between.
between.
Cool. But whilst I might have my own thoughts, I don't think it's fair for me to express them until I've had a chance to discuss it with the other trustees.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, John. That's another big plus, I think, for the village. Road junction study progress, Mr. Lewis.
All right. Okay. So for the this subject relates to the study that we had done on Horse Chestnut Tree Junction, and the question is, how are we going to follow up on that study? What are we going to do with the results of it? And suggestions are written in a document that we've been working up offline in the last couple of weeks. We've been all members of the parish council, so I'm saying this for the benefit of our public who's listening. And there is a final copy of that with all the councillors, and I'm going to just talk about that in a moment. But for anybody listening, I've also put a copy on the website. It's available in the meetings section of the website if you want to go and look at it. Probably not now, but immediately afterwards. So, as I say, the purpose is to agree a way forward on what we're going to do with the outcome from this study. Now, the paper that I was talking about, it spells that out. It describes some background to this whole subject. It mentions the fact that the parish council concerns, well, it says they go back as far as the village plan in 2014. I think, to be honest, they go back a whole lot further than that, but I chose in the background only to go back that far. And we talk about the significant number of actions, initiatives, discussions that the parish council has had since that time. And it's noted that the discussions really are in three areas. One is related to freight traffic through the village, which we've already mentioned again this evening. Another relates to speeding through the village, and the third is related to the safety of that junction. And whilst I mentioned those as three separate topics, to be honest, they are all fairly closely interrelated. One impacts on another. But that's the three areas of our effort so far. The paper goes on to summarise what we've done, both in terms of the kind of freight surveys and our participation with the county council on the freight strategy. What we've done so far on traffic calming measures through the village, which we've talked about lots of times, and the most visible signs so far are the new gates and the new entry signs. And then the safety relates to the junction and the study that we've had done. We first discussed the output from that study back in October, and we looked at the options, and we at that point took the view that what we've called option 3, or what the study calls option 3, was our preferred way forward. I'm not going into detail right here and now, but it essentially involves a reshaping of the junction plus some other measures on the main route through the village. And these address essentially both the speeding and the safety concerns. Having decided back in October last year to go with option 3 as our preferred approach, we did a public consultation in January and February of this year. Not a huge response, perhaps it was because it was winter, but that response, to the extent that we had replies, generally speaking, agreed with our view that of any of these, option 3 was the preferred way forward. The benefits of option 3 really were that it met our objectives in terms of speeding and safety more closely did any of the other options. It was, however, a fairly expensive option. Well, quite a lot of them were fairly expensive, but that certainly was up there with them. The figure mentioned in the study was £200,000. There's various views around that it might end up being more than that, but it is built up of component parts, so you don't necessarily have to do it all or do it all at once, but that's the sort of figure we're talking about. So whilst I think we're all fairly well agreed that we'd like to press on and get this done, obviously the issue of finance arises, and we've had quite a lot of conversations around the extent to which the parish council should or could fund some of that expense. In doing that, of course, we're acutely aware that highways are not a parish council responsibility. They're very much a county council responsibility. At one level that says, right, well, we just leave it to the county council. But then we all know that if we just leave it to the county council, then the chance of something actually happening is not very high. The only reason that we've achieved quite a lot of success with what we've done through the village so far has been because we are prepared to put a lot of effort and some parish council money into moving things forward. And as an example, we note that part of what's going to be done there that we originally agreed to fund was some white lining work and some dragon's teeth at the entrances. And that hasn't been done yet. The reason it hasn't been done is because Bucks Council have said they're going to resurface that whole route, so there wasn't a lot of point in going ahead and spending that money. But because of that, the county council are now going to fund that themselves. They told us that they will fund the lining of the dragon's teeth work. So some money that we were originally going to spend on the parish council, because of our efforts in chivying Bucks Council along, they're going to now do it. Now, they certainly wouldn't have been offering to do that if we'd have just left them to it. It wouldn't have happened. And I think that's a fairly good example of how, with the right sort of moves from the parish council, we can achieve results that we might otherwise not have expected. The question then becomes, what can we do about this latest piece of work? And the view I think we've all got at the moment is it's unrealistic to expect that we would even try to spend the full amount. We can't afford it, and it's not our job to do it. But equally, given our approach to these things, the fact that we all agree that we need to chippy councils along to get progress, I think there's an acceptance that we've got to put effort and probably some money into this as well. The trick is going to be getting to the right balance between what we put in and what we press the county council for. And because of that, there is no figure mentioned in the paper. It's far too early at the moment to be trying to work out what's the right amount for us to put in to achieve the results that we want to. And there's obviously lots of discussions to be had with the county council to see what they're prepared to do. So that broadly summarises what's in the paper. Or the one thing I didn't mention is the results of the public consultation are in there as well for everybody listening who's interested to read the detail. But in the light of that sort of summary I've just given and everything that's written in the paper, it concludes with some recommendations. 3 recommendations are that the parish council agrees to continue its work on achieving improvements to that junction, that we acknowledge that we'll have to provide both effort and some element of financial resource to achieve those objectives, and that we establish a subgroup to lead on this work. And then the terms of reference for that subgroup are also included, which I don't think I need to go through now. So in conclusion, Nick, colleagues, I would just say that I would put those recommendations on the table for adoption this evening.
Okay, so thank you, John, for that. And I know for those people who may be watching and have not heard about this before, let me tell you, there has been considerable work done by a number of people on the parish council, all of the parish councillors and other people outside, to try and resolve what has been arriving for some time. As John says, this isn't something that's happened in 5 or 10, this has been going back for some time. And given the roads, given the traffic, given the population, given the new routes, the businesses opening around us, we can't ignore the impact that it has on our village. So we can either do nothing and just wait for a handout, wait for somebody to give us some guidance and a council, Bucks County councils, or we can keep lobbying and we keep working and keep recommending and hope that with the relationships we're building up and have built up, we will eventually get some support in once and for all creating a junction that isn't not just a rat run right across that road from particularly Winchton towards Long Crendon and vice versa. And the balance is, these things cost money. And whilst we can't afford anything like those sort of monies, and it is a highways issue as well, can we do anything to encourage them to help us achieve what we want with them picking up, I would imagine, the lion's share of it, but us showing willing to maybe contribute something. And I don't know what that is. I think there has to be conversations. But the key to it for me at the moment is we either sit down, lie down, let it just continue as ever, or at least keep foraging and pushing and cajoling and talking and trying to get a solution that will once and for all improve that junction in the century and beyond we're in. I don't know, thoughts from people.
Well, I think, traffic is definitely a major issue. This is the first step to sorting out something that is at the centre of the problem and the village. I mean, it's not exclusive. It doesn't deal with the outskirts. That's a separate issue. But I think the PC pushing it makes a lot of sense to me, and I agree. It needs effort, but I would be, I don't think, as you said, has already been stated, we can't fund it, ourselves as a parish council. But I think by doing the requisite studies, or keeping the pressure up, maybe putting some effort into presenting plans, spending a very small amount of money to do that, I think that's worthwhile.
Yeah, I would just add, excellent work by the two Johns on this, because I think they've put in the bulk of the work on our behalf. And clearly, it's the pressure group type approach, isn't it, where it could achieve a result, whereas doing nothing, certainly nothing will get done at all. So let's keep our fingers crossed that the continuous pressure will yield some results and get our project to the forefront of their funding.
Yep.
I think
So,
Nick, you've probably got the support of virtually the whole village. I mean, people I talk to, everybody's got a tale to tell about near misses at that junction.
yeah,
The work that the PC has put in already, I think is fantastic. And we've just got to keep knocking at the door and keep lobbying and keep pushing and cajoling and just really keep at it and get something done.
thanks, Ian. So I sort of take it then there's a general consensus that we keep pushing, as Ian says, keep cajoling, developing relationship, acting, as Paul says, as a pressure group. Just keep that thumb on it and not just let it go, and then try and find a way through in terms of the funding to make it happen. So John Lewis has agreed to head up that subcommittee. We'll all contribute. If there are people listening tonight that feel that they want to get involved in a constructive way, then please contact John Lewis, or through me, or through Helen, or through any of us. You're all very welcome. But I think we take the foot off the gas and that's it. I think we don't go back. We won't be allowed back. We'll lose the momentum. So this is going to be for the long haul, I think, but it might be shorter with the works that we're trying to do. I think broadly, John, that's where we are.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. I mean, if we can, I don't know if the wording we've got there is agreeable to everybody, then I think we've got a firm framework to take this work forward.
Yeah.
My support.
I think
definitely support.
I think that's agreed, John.
Okay, that's good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. An
excellent executive summary. Because it's not been quite as simple as that, really, is it? And then the bloody moths, and then the moths got in the way.
If you keep your executives happy, then you're doing a good job, I always reckon.
Okay, parishioners question time. You'll be pleased to know if Fenella's still watching. Hello, Fenella, good to see you. I've had 3 emails from her while you've been talking. First one says, would PC like an ash tree, just dug it up 4 foot plus high? I'm not sure you should be digging up trees at this time of the evening, Fenella, but thank you very much for the offer, and we will note that in the minutes to see if people are interested in taking your ash tree. She also said, originally we had the John Hart's charity in the village. I was a trustee. It folded because no one put in requests. Then we had a village trust, not everyone very happy. The fate money was split between the village hall and the church. It was then split 3 ways. No one put in requests for money, so it became non-existent. And there was very little demand for either charity. Vanilla. Well, that's good to know. It's part of history. We're going to try and change things, and we're going to try and publicize it, and I dare use the word market it somewhat, and see if we can make a difference to people's lives. These are small gifts sometimes, small things that are done, whether it be a light outside a lady's window, an old lady's window, an old man's window, a young fellow in the winter to help them see the snow. I don't know, but these things are good. They show that the community care. And if I've seen anything in this village in the last few years, particularly in the last 3 months, my God, this community cares about people, and long may that last. So thanks, Vanilla, and I will be sending you a note on the footpaths, and we'll go from there. I don't think there's any more questions. I've not had anything else come through on the.
There was what I got, Nick, from Tony Babington, wanting to know a response about his suggestion of a pedestrian crossing.
Good point. I saw Tony today and he mentioned it, and I said, well, if he tunes in tonight, we're on Netflix, so that's probably why he's not here.
He's watching.
He's watching.
He
I
is,
know,
definitely.
I know he is, but I just thought I'd wind him up. Netflix or Amazon Prime, Tony, maybe Amazon Prime. Crossroads, crossing roads. Who would like to pick that up?
Well, I'll say, if you like, I'll say a few bits about the research I did on it. And everyone's happy with that.
Yep.
I did look into the requirements published by the government on the not the viability. Well, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is.
Desirability.
But what you need, desirability, yes, and requirements. That's it, on pedestrian crossings. Now, I've had a look since I sent the email to you guys, and there hasn't been any publication since 1995 that I can find. So I'm assuming that that's still standing. But essentially, regardless of the desirability of an extra piece of street furniture, if you like, there would be issues with locating it where I'm assuming Tony was thinking was sort of from the green and across to the bus stop, that kind of area, which would be centrally in the village. But for part of the requirements would be in a 30 mile per hour zone, there needs to be 75 meters of clear visibility, and obviously that would be on a bend, and the issue is also caused there by the bus stop. So I think we would struggle to get anything put there, even if we decided down the line we wanted to do that. Also, I think there already is street lighting in Long Crendon, which is why they probably don't need to have any additional lighting apart from the flashing lights for the pedestrian crossing. Whereas I'm pretty sure we would have to have extra street lighting, and we wouldn't just be able to have just the crossing and the flashing lights. So visibility wise, the straightest piece of road would be the Winchenden Road to have it, and obviously that's where the village hall is. But whether that would be suitable for everyone, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me to have to cross lots of roads to get to a crossing. Doesn't really make any sense. So that was kind of the information that I found by looking up the requirements needed to safely put a pedestrian crossing in. But that also doesn't take into account whether people want to go down that route, whether there's the perceived need. So that was the discussions we kind of had.
Okay, Jules. I think there's a general feeling that a crossroads in some ways would be sort of desirable because, well, let me speak for myself. I think that it would enhance the crossing of the roads, particularly between the two bus stops. And if you look at it in the winter, morning and when it's dark and the weather's appalling, it is a much safer way of approaching things between the two stops. But it is, as you say, about location and implications of lighting and power and all that sort of thing. And I just think in that particular location where it should be, it's very difficult because you're then compromised by the slip road down towards the Bell. You know, it's such a busy area. I'm not sure that it would work. I think, Paul, you had some views which I agreed with. I don't know if you can sum that up better than me, but.
No, I think, in fact, I think two or three of us came up with the similar comment, really. I mean, the desirability from a safety point of view is understood. The comparison with Long Crendon is wrong because Long Crendon is a B road that runs through the village. This is a C road. And to my knowledge, I can't actually think of any village that has a pedestrian crossing. No, I do stand to be corrected on that. So I think the general feeling that urbanisation will be creeping in, the same as, you know, it's this word that's coming in with other aspects of the village, where, you know, we're trying to keep it looking like a village and not like a town. And obviously the lighting is a major issue, because to my knowledge in the past you'd always have to have street lighting to have a zebra crossing.
Yeah. Any other thoughts at all?
I would just add that I go along with what Paul says there. I think I can think of lots of reasons why you don't want it. Obviously, safety trumps them all if there is a safety issue. But I would need to see the evidence that there is such an issue.
Yeah. John H.
No, I mean, you know, it is definitely an urban approach to a problem. Yes, you know, we should always keep our minds open to, you know, ways of improving safety. But I know, you know, I heed Julia's words really, because, you know, I think as far as we can see, the rule book simply wouldn't permit it. So, you know, combined with obviously requirements for lighting and so on, which would certainly, I would imagine, would be a fairly contentious issue among our residents. So at the moment, I tend to think that it's not the way forward.
Yeah, well, yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I'll put a bit of a light-hearted look on this. Tony, if you're still there, we may be looking for a lollipop man, which might be a more sort of I don't know, what's the word, more villagey type approach to the problem. Well, seriously, somebody was saying to me the other day, actually, I was thinking, yeah, well, you had somebody up there in the morning, and particularly in the dark mornings and dark evenings. Would that work? Would that help? Is that more friendly to a village? I don't know, but
it might be very effective.
Sorry?
It might be very effective. I mean, I was actually thinking exactly the same thought as I was kind of swishing it around in my head, you know, having somebody, you know, who helps the children cross, and, you know, with a big sign, yellow coat and all the rest of it, high vis jacket.
Yeah. Can I just point out that when I use the word lollipop man, I'm not being very gender friendly, so I don't know what the equivalent is of
I don't know what it's called.
A lollipop.
Lollipop lady, isn't it?
Lollipop person.
It's a road crossing operative.
Oh,
Yeah, normally a school crossing.
Any
patrol.
other business?
Can I?
but maybe we'll think about it. Okay. Thank you for that. Fenella sent me her last email of the evening. Dear councillors, enjoy your meeting, but so frustrating for me. Must be a bit peaceful for you. Well done. Best wishes, Fenella. Thank you, Fenella.
Thank you, Fenella.
We miss you. Seriously.
Fenella is a star.
Yes, absolutely.
Every village needs one.
Maybe she could become the lollipop person or something. Maybe, you know, that'd be brilliant, you know, with a trolley and sign and everything. I think there's a job in there, Fenella. Okay. That just leaves us to say any items for information, councillors and officers. Robert, can I start with you on my screen first? So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Lewis.
Couple of points. One, I should have mentioned it under correspondence, I suppose, but I had an email from Susan just offering a quick update on her efforts. She says, just let us know that from her point of view, everything's going swimmingly, she says, with a willing and helpful bunch of volunteers. Says they're averaging 10 to 15 requests a week, mainly for prescriptions. She says there's little telephone support, not quite sure what that means. Both volunteers and those needing assistance are enjoying meeting villagers they haven't encountered before, which is an interesting side benefit, all very positive. And she says she sent you, John, some updated bullet points for submission to Bucks CC.
Yes, I included them all in the note, which you all saw, that with the report that we forwarded to Bucks CC last week.
Okay, yes, that's right.
I will, sorry, that was very remiss of me. I should have, you know, she was on the circulations. I will send a copy of Susan's note to everybody, but I did incorporate all the points she mentioned in the copy that we put together.
So I think I would just suggest we record a huge well done to Susan and her band of volunteers for the
Yeah,
excellent job they're doing. And a huge thanks.
Well done to Susan Olding.
Well done, Susan.
Good name.
Brilliant, brilliant.
The other point I was going to mention was a smaller item really, is for the benefit of anybody listening who hasn't got the message that the village map has now been updated, available on both the website and the blog. And I had just a message from Tony Babington earlier on, pointing out that he's renamed his place back to the barn. So there's a little change for everybody to note and us to make next time we update it. So
Thanks,
there you go,
John.
Tony, if you're listening, it's all noted.
Thank you very much, JL. Martin, in the dark there almost.
No, I was going to say the only thing I can think of is, has anybody got 5p I can borrow for the meter? But no, nothing from me.
Thanks, Martin. Helen,
No, nothing from me.
how are the kids? They all behaving?
Getting there.
Well done. Paul Bouncer,
No, no,
Nope.
from here. Thank you.
John Howard.
Can I just ask a question? I've been a little bit out of circulation today, but I know I believe there are some works going on the Long Crendon Road. That's not.
There are. For those who are coming back from playing golf this afternoon at the Oxfordshire, I couldn't get through, so I had to go back into Tame and through Cuddington. I
God,
don't know what's going on, but it is
my heart bleeds for you.
Thank you. I need that.
On,
But no, it is.
John,
The road was closed.
Could I ask? Does anybody know what they are?
Hang on,
I
John.
think it's water. Looking at the road closure network, road is closed 18th to the 22nd, either complete closure or delays, and it's got a tap with a drip coming out of it, so I'm assuming water.
Right.
There's also gas repairs going on and some small road repairs.
So it's not our promised resurfacing.
It doesn't look like it at the moment.
No.
Because
Has anybody told
they
them
wouldn't
we don't
normally
have
alert
gas?
us to it anyway, but no, that's fine. That's fine. Nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
This
through
is
me.
good. I might do my walk down there tomorrow. Then it'll be nice and quiet with the dog.
Yeah.
I'll go and ask them.
Jules, have you got anything to say extra?
No.
Oh, come
Sorry.
on. Okay, Ian.
No, nothing more from me. There'll be further updates on the beastly leaf mining moths, future meetings. That's it.
Okay, nothing from me. And just to remind everyone, the next meeting is Monday, the 15th of June at 7:30, probably in the same format, unless something revolutionary happens in the meantime. But I'd like to just say thank you very much to all the councillors and officers, and thank you very much to all the people who've taken the time to dial into YouTube and listen. And I'm hoping the rest of this has been recorded, Keith, so people can look back on it.
Hopefully, yes.
But also encourage people to spread the word, and also send us questions, send us challenges, keep us on our toes. Thank you very much, everybody, and a very, very good evening. Stay safe and well.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Night.
Night all.